Welcome to part 2 of my Bob Ross painting Fisherman's Trail. I'm going to carry on using this old 1-inch brush. Gosh, it's worked hard, hasn't it? But I want to create a misty effect just here. And I'm just going to tap with the side of the brush. The idea is just to diffuse the base of the mountain. I just want to sort of create a soft misty effect where I can paint some trees against. And of course, don't forget, you have to follow the line of the mountain. Now, there's not a lot of colour here to diffuse, so grab a little bit off your palette, it's a bit of the pale blue colour, and just tap. There we go. Let's speed it up a little bit for you. But do remember, follow the lay of the land. So whichever way the mountainside you're working on, follow it down over towards the pins. There we go. All finished. I've tidied up my palette. And now I'm going to mix up a nice dark green colour for my fir trees. So I'm going to use the original mountain colour, that dark blue inky blue colour, and add a good slug of sap green into it. Mix it up well. I want a really dark, deep, cool bottle green colour. And I'm going to use a fan brush. Whenever you paint fir trees, always remember to load your brush well, especially the corners. You want to make sure the brush is completely matted together and full of paint. Give it a little wiggle on the palette just to make sure the bristles splay apart, and bring the brush to a chiseled edge. Here we are, back to the painting, and I want to give myself a couple of markers. I want to know where the base of the tree is going to be. So I'm going to put a curved line so it looks like it's going off into the distance a little bit, and then curve it round towards me and curve it round into the foreground. So that's going to be the line of bushes and trees. There we go. And of course the size of the trees. And again, I like to put on some little reference marks. I just use the handle of my fan brush and I just scratch into the wet paint. This keeps me sort of roughly on track. Add lots of different sizes, bigger, smaller, intermediates, and some that cross the edge of the mountain too, and some nice tall ones at the sides. Now take care with the size. You don't really want to be competing with the top of the mountain, so either go above or below. First thing I like to do is to mark that centre line just with the brush on edge. I'll do a little bit of close-up work for you as well so you can see this. I'll try and keep my hand out the way. So just mark out where you think the main centres will be. Add a few more here and there. There we go. And this gives you a much better idea of your layout. Now then, my trees have little downward facing bristles, so tip your handle down and on a corner. There we go. And keep using the same corner. And this is just tapping. You're not actually brushing, you're just creating a textured shape of a tree. And this is most important, that you use the same corner. You don't flip your handle backwards and forwards. You tend to make sort of very sort of thin, spindly looking trees, and fir trees usually are very dense. Oops, I've got a bit of a funny edge there. Maybe I'll grow that a bit wider. So reload your brush and let's make that a little bit taller and change the edge of it. Again, on that same corner, tap, tap, tap. And as you come down, let the bristles press a little harder. The paint will sort of splay a little further from the bristles and you can create bigger, wider trees. Notice I'm still on that same corner. There. Let's add some more. I'll speed this bit up. I've moved to the other side of the canvas and I'm going to do this big tree, and I've zoomed in close and I'm going to show you a slightly different technique. This time, instead of letting the tree grow wider as I grow down, I'm just going to fill in the centre first. So put a nice dark column of green, still using that same one corner. I find this is sometimes easier for people to create a better looking tree. Now, having got the centre in nice and dark, you can come back in and just here and there add a few wider branches. So this is a much sort of more gentle, sort of slower pace of painting fir trees that I think anyone struggling to do good tree shapes might find easier. But try both and see which one suits your style best. I think the most important thing you can ever learn to do when you're painting is to stop. Stand back so you can really see how your painting's looking. As you see, I've gone back and put in the rest of my trees and I'm pretty happy with it, but this brush needs to do a little bit more work. I need some highlights. So I'm just going to wipe off some of the dark green paint. And let's not forget, those highlights are on the right. Here's my palette and I've put out some highlight colours. I didn't put out any yellow ochre in the end. I decided I didn't need it. But I'm going to go in sap green and cad yellow and Indian yellow. And notice how I pull my paint out into a little sort of curtain of colour and I just press my brush into the paint. Just give it a light tap. Here's a close-up. Get that lovely, rich, juicy paint right on the edge of the brush. Perfect. When you add the highlights to these trees and bushes, you hardly need any pressure at all. That lovely wet paint will just stick to these edges with hardly a touch. Here we go. Just on that corner again. And you're highlighting probably about a third of the dark colour. So save a lot of the original dark colours. And I do the right hand side first. And as the paint runs out, I'll do a little bit of the highlighting towards the centre of the tree. The left side of the tree, well, that's in shadow, so it doesn't get hardly any. If you enjoy my tutorials and you want to support the channel, consider subscribing. Hit the little thumbs up button and ring the bell. It really helps my channel grow. Thank you. I want to add some bushes to the base of these trees, and I'm going to use the corner of my fan brush, but this time upward pressing. Make little sort of smiley shapes with the brush and let them overlap. Just like the trees though, remember which way the light's coming from and don't kill off all the lovely shadowy areas. Here's a close-up. Press, push, move on. And try not to come back over the same area 3 or 4 times. It just gets very muddy. Now for some reflections, but as you can see, well, I brought my highlights right down to the edge. So I'm going to use my old 1-inch brush again and grab some of that little bit of dark colour that I have left over. I may have to come back and do a little change or two on this, but I tried to drag the colour down to sort of echo what's happening above. So nice tall trees above, nice deep reflections below. Press and push hard. Yes, I'm picking up a lot of the highlight colour. I should have left a bit more dark. So learn from my little happy accident. I went back, dropped in a little bit more dark, and I'll pull that down and make a darker shadow. Time for a waterline. I got some of this really grubby white paint left over, and I'm going to spread it out very, very thin and tap my knife into it. I just want a tiny little bit on the edge of the knife blade, and I want to just go under the darkest shadowy areas with that little blobble and just touch and slide. Give it a little soaring action. Now that's a little bit bright, and I'll knock a bit of paint off my knife and just rub over it again. So you don't want these to be too eye-poppingly bright. Pick up a little bit of paint up and move it along and add them here and there. But again, notice they're all level. Even when you go round a corner, you go round in a series of level steps. I want to bring this tree forward, so I'm going to extend it down a little lower than the line of the water. Here we go. With the fan brush, just stab in some extra little bits of bush and foliage. There we are. And of course, I'm going to give it a little bit of extra highlight too. And I'm going to go a little bit brighter with my highlights. I want this to really stand forward of the one on the right. So, a nice sharp highlight. There we go. Nice little distance between the two. And just add a few extra sparklers here and there. Time to underpaint my bushes. Back on my palette, and I've pulled out some lovely dark green paint, and I'm using my old 1-inch brush once again. I haven't used the other brush yet. Now notice that I pull my paint with my brush in one single direction, and not with the brush too sort of laid flat, but press it into the paint. I want to create a lovely textured effect. My brush is open. It is not stuck together. Now, come on to my painting and just press. Can you see what I'm doing? I let the bristles just splay apart and leave almost like a little explosion of dark colour. This is very important. I'm texturing my canvas so that when I come to do my highlighting, there's a lovely sticky bed of paint for it to stick to. I try and make as many individual shapes as I can so that there's an easier sort of idea of where to put the highlights. In the centre, I'm just going to fill it in. I finally get a chance to use this nice new springy brush, and I'm going to load the brush in the same way as before with the rounded side towards me. So let's spread out the paint a little bit, make a little curtain of colours, but don't overmix them. There we go, put it all towards me. And as I said, I'm going to load my brush in one direction, the curved side coming towards me. There we go. Move my hand out the way and you can see I press the brush into the paint, lean the handle back slightly and just let the bristles spring into that soft, wet paint. Notice the brush is lovely and open again. No big chunky monkeys in there. And the rounded side came towards me. Here's my brush. Have a good look. Rounded side towards the top of the bushes. So I'm going to do one little bush at a time, rounded side to the top, and just gently touch and press. A lot less pressure highlighting than you did making the original dark colour. Now that looks a little bit round to me, a bit like a clock face, and I want to make it a little bit more pointy. So I go back in and just add a few little extra highlights here and there. Do one little bush at a time. Time to add the Fisherman's Trail. I use my filbert brush, a little bit of titanium white and some grubby white as well, a little bit of the original Christmas brown and some dark sienna, and roughly mix this. I want this to be very marbly, and I'll dip into different places on that little patch of colour. There we are. Load the brush well. And think about how the trail is smaller in the distance and gets wider as it comes towards you. I think the fisherman's been down here many times trying to catch his dinner, and he's wandered into a little bit of a shallow sort of dip. Now for some finishing touches. Firstly, I'm going to use my fan brush with a little bit of highlight just to soften the edge of the foliage where it meets the path. It's a small detail, but I like to soften the edges of paths especially where there's bushes and weeds and trees. Time for fine detail. I've zoomed in to show you the edge of my palette knife, and I'm going to just slide it along, and as I do, I'm going to get some of that dark green paint to slide up, and it creates the most wonderful little details in your painting. But don't tell anybody how you did it, just our secret. And of course, in the dark areas, you can scratch away the paint down to the original beige canvas underneath, and this creates lovely ideas of sticks and twigs. You can even add a few tree trunks into your fir trees if you wish. There we are. Perfect. Last thing I'm going to do is sign my painting. Take a little drop of thinners, and I'm going to just thin down my red paint. And I want to make this thin and runny, but not too much thinners. And down here at the bottom, I'm just going to put my initials. And of course, a little bird on top. And we're done. My finished painting. But, well, maybe there's something I don't like. Him. Yes, you've got to go. So I get my filbert brush and just give him a little bit of the old magic blending. And just like that, it's gone. Don't forget to come back and join me for another painting. In the meantime, watch this one next. Happy painting, people, from me and Henny.